Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, hope everybody had a great lunch. Amazing food at this facility, I have to say. So let's get started. We're on tight schedules all the way around. And so my name is Joanne. I'm part of the 12-step outreach team and a member of the planning team. So what a great privilege it is for me to introduce our presenters. Widening the Circle. First, I'll start with Keith. I got to work with Keith through 12-step outreach through his online Closer Than Breath. And what an amazing ministry gift you give to the world. So I'll introduce with Keith's bio, and I don't want to miss anything, so I'm going to read a lot of it. Keith is a writer, a retreat leader, and a teacher of contemplative prayer. Keith is a commissioned presenter of Centering Prayer, trained with the Shalom Institute of Spiritual Formation in leading contemplative prayer groups and retreats, and is a certified teacher of meditation and the Enneagram. Founder of the online community Closer Than Breath, Keith aims to help people reimagine the divine, unlearn rigid religion, and see God everywhere. And so our other presenter is Colleen. I had the pleasure of I've interacted with Colleen, through our connection through 12-step and contemplative outreach, and the gift of meeting Colleen in person. Colleen is a spiritual director and longtime practitioner of Centering Prayer. Colleen delights in companioning others on their spiritual journey. Trained in the monastic arts of discernment, spiritual companionship, and retreat leadership, she leads contemplative prayer groups, workshops, and retreats. She serves on the diversity outreach coordinator for contemplative outreach, and as a program director of Still Point, a center of Christian spirituality. Her particular passion is for extending contemplative practice and teaching to younger BIPOC communities. Colleen earned her master's in theology and art from Fuller Theological Seminary. She worked in television in Los Angeles for 15 years before relocating her home to Washington, D.C., where she continues to explore her creative passions while enjoying the close companionship of her family. And I've got a website here that I'll share at the end that you can see more of Colleen's teachings and more about Colleen and her practices. And so I just have to say it's a gift to be here to present these two wonderful humans, and here they are.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Hello to friends joining us on Zoom. And for those in the room, I hope you're well fed and not too sleepy. Feeling it a little bit. But yeah, I'm here just to give a quick hello, and we'll pass it off to Colleen in a minute. But originally and still live in Buffalo, New York. I came to contemplative prayer and centering prayer really by accident. Born into the evangelical world, we didn't have a word for this silence, this interior silence, this experience of the divine presence within. I grew up and went to an evangelical college, accidentally falling into the well of silence in my dorm room and not having a clue what to call it. And as an evangelical, all I knew is, I think this is meditation, and meditation equaled Buddhism. So my earliest explorations in this path was through the Buddhist teachings, but within a few months, I was invited into a contemplative retreat center, Mount Irenaeus in New York State, if anybody's familiar. And it was there that I was introduced to the practice of centering prayer, which has stuck with me for the last 12 or so years. And I am here because I'm, a witness to the transformation of this practice. I've felt it interiorly for my own self, and if feeling the transformation, sharing the gift of contemplation with others. It's a true gift and calling to bring that forward. I grew up with God, the guy in the sky. God was the guy. God was the father, and certainly not a mother. God was up there, the guy in the sky, and for those from the global south, that means God is down there. And so all of us are going this way and that way with where God is. But yeah, to learn that God is alive and present already within me is one of the most transformative experiences that we can have, and that I've had. And so an honor to share that. With that, I'll bring up Colleen for the first half of this, and we'll mention Colleen will present really first with PowerPoint. We gave permission to each other to interrupt each other if we want to say something. We may do that, we may not, but Colleen.
Okay, hello, everyone. I will say again, which I often say, that I actually wouldn't be here working with contemplative outreach if it wasn't for Keith, because although I've been practicing centering prayer, I wasn't connected with contemplative outreach. I was connected to the teachings of Father Thomas Keating. I was introduced to centering prayer in seminary through a priest in the Episcopal Church, and I had a relationship with Father Thomas in the library of our seminary basement, reading his books. And most of my centering prayer formation happened in my spiritual direction communities when I was being formed as a spiritual director. In the pandemic, Keith built an entire network of friends through Instagram. He DM'd me. I should actually look back to see if I can find that first direct message from you. And not just me, but others in our young contemplatives community now, Tia Norman and Logan and Cameron and all of these people that Keith built relationships with through social media. And so we are social media friends, and now it's really fantastic that I get to spend time in person with him. This is my second time hanging out with him this year. We were together at a retreat in New Mexico, which I'll share a little bit more about. So I thought I would spend my time talking about my work with contemplative outreach. And as I was preparing this, I was like, wow, this 2024 has been a busy year in the best way, very fulfilling. And I'm really grateful. Oh, there's Kathleen, because Kathleen, you always remind me about, I don't know exactly what you say, but you check in to make sure I'm not doing too much. And I always say, I am, but I feel good. And it's true. It's like this work really feels joyful and fulfilling. And I know it's the grace of God that gives me the energy and the enthusiasm for the work. So I started with contemplative outreach 2 years ago, 2022, summer of 2022. And that was right when I moved from LA back to my hometown of Washington, DC, where in LA I was really deeply formed. And so I've spent the first couple of years in Washington, DC and Maryland, getting acclimated with contemplative outreach and the staff and board, whom I love, and it's a pleasure to work with, but also with my local contemplative outreach chapters. I think Dick and Linda are in here somewhere. There they are. And Lori, who's in Virginia, there she is. I'm blessed I have two chapters, local chapters, because the DC metro area includes both of them. And this year in 2020, fall of 2023, actually last fall, I did my first ever intensive centering prayer retreat with Dick and Linda and my contemplative outreach Maryland, Washington chapter. And this summer, I did my second intensive retreat with the young professionals in at the Llama Foundation with Jenny Curtis out there. So I'm still in formation, and I'm really grateful to be experiencing deepening my practice now in the community of contemplative outreach. I started my work with the young contemplatives, and I'm gonna share some pictures here because it helps to see us. So when we started talking about young contemplatives, Keith and I first called this group. Well, Keith, I think, wanted to do 40 and under, and I knew I was about to be 40. And so he's younger than me. So I said, what about 40s and under? And so now it's kind of like the under 50 crowd. And we're doing stuff, you know, we had a facilitator training. Let's see, where's our facilitator training? Oh, shoot. We had a facilitator training. I don't have that picture here, you all, with 91 people who were registered in July of 2023. And then we had a weekend, a Saturday and Sunday facilitator training in November, and there were 41 people registered for that one. So young contemplatives are actually really hungry for the practice, but also for sharing the prayer. This is a screenshot of an early monthly gathering of what Matt termed for us the beloveds. We meet once a month on Saturdays and do a sit together and just have some informal fellowship. And then this year, after the facilitator training, I was praying and wondering, what do we do next? Early on when I started, I had some work goals that I had talked through with Mary Jane Yates, who was our then program administrator. And we talked about the importance of formation and the teaching. And so what started this June was this spiritual journey weekly Zoom series. And so every Saturday morning from 10:30 to 11:30, we meet on Zoom. We watch one of the spiritual journey videos right from the website together. And we do a sit and we talk about the teaching. And in that way, we're growing together and we're getting the foundational teaching of Father Thomas under our belt. I forgot to mention that when we first did that facilitator training, because I just looked at Bob Mishke and the facilitators team supported us in that and were present with us when we had those 91 people registered. So we are thankful too for the facilitator team for supporting us. This is a picture of us at the Young Professionals Retreat at Llama. I think this is like day 5, no shower. Yeah. It was a kind of smelly group photo. But we were happy, you know. Llama is beautiful. I didn't get to go to Snowmass, but I'm glad I got to experience the Llama community. I learned something interesting at Llama too. And I want to talk a little bit about diversity later on, but I'll come back to all the things I've been kind of noticing and having these experiences with the young contemplatives. But I thought I would share some just numbers. So we set up a getting to know you forum. 170 young contemplatives have self-identified as under 50 through this forum. The majority of them are practicing 1 to 3 years or less. But more than 50 of those identify as pastors or priests, spiritual directors, therapists, or yoga instructors. So the sense I have from that too is that we are leaders. We are very interested in spiritual formation. And there are gifts and the community of young contemplatives that encourage me when we think about the future of contemplative outreach. Um, of that 170, when asked if they're interested in facilitating a centering prayer group, 93 said yes. 60 said no, but there's more than half of the young contemplatives are interested in facilitating centering prayer groups. And this is important because they're all over the place, these young contemplatives. But if you notice here, when they're asked, are they aware of a local chapter, 117 of them say no. And I'm sharing this because often people ask me, how do we get more young contemplatives? I don't necessarily have the answer to that question. This first couple of years for me has been information gathering and community building. And I hope that we can continue to dialogue and work together about how to commission this 93 that want to facilitate groups, and how to invite the 117 who say, I'm not aware of my local chapter. The ages range. About 60 are between 18 and 34. 76 are between 35 and 44, and 20-something are 45 to 55. And then there's a handful of over 55s who just can't resist filling out the getting to know you form. I want to share some reflections from the survey too. This one from the Heart of Texas chapter. I did try going to a couple of their groups as a college student. I found the age gaps between myself and the other group members to be a little too great. At one, I was easily the youngest by 30 and likely by 40 years. We're just at completely different stages of life, and we've grown up surrounded by different cultures. It wasn't that we couldn't relate to one another at all, but we definitely had different areas of struggle in life. They were all retired, and I'm trying to decide on a major. From Southern Colorado chapter, I sit with a prayer group in this chapter and also volunteer to help plan, host workshops with the chapter, helped form the chapter itself. But now I just manage the web page for the group, which is no jest. That's a huge service to chapters. I also facilitate our centering prayer group meetings monthly, rotating the responsibility with other group members. I'm aware of some, but really looking for a way to meet other young contemplatives specifically, so this is exciting. From Minnesota Contemplative Outreach, yes, I'm connected with this chapter and its offering. I'd be interested in meeting other contemplatives in their 20s and 30s, as I have not met many. Yes, I am connected with the Chicago chapter, though less so since they stopped holding in-person events. Something that I've been noticing, more so, not as much this year. I think people are getting back outside post-pandemic, but younger people seem to be more interested in in-person connections. And I'm learning that I think it's because also at a younger stage in life, we're not just looking for a prayer practice, we're looking for friendship. You know, you want to connect with other contemplatives who you can be friends with. You know, as our consciousness starts changing, our interests start changing, the kinds of conversations we want to have start changing. So we want to, it changes the nature of our friendships. At this stage in my life, I don't have many friends that aren't on a journey towards getting to know themselves deeply. So friendship is really key to this community too. Okay, this is interesting. Contemplative Outreach of Southeast Wisconsin. Yes, they gave me a scholarship. We'll be talking a little bit about accessibility too later and the importance of scholarships. Kansas City gets a newsletter. So they're reading the newsletters, right? It may be a bit about what we're incorporating into the newsletters that might appeal and how we're sharing information. Champaign-Urbana Urbana in Bloomington, Illinois. Attended an introductory workshop this summer and have read through Open Mind, Open Heart. We also learned during the facilitator training that most of those 91 who came to the facilitator training have read those foundational books, Invitation to Love, and Opening Mind, Open Heart. Okay, so this is related to the web page design and the what's in your newsletters. I thought I would just include this quick graphic. I actually shared with Tom this morning. Yes, this morning that I made this PowerPoint presentation last night, okay, using Canva. And Tom was like, "What's Canva?" Well, this is Canva. And actually, Keith told me about Canva. Once you start using Canva, be careful because you'll end up being up until midnight. That's what happened to me. It's fun. You have a template. You can make all this stuff. Look at this. Doesn't this look professional? I did that. I did that. But I really didn't do a whole lot because this font and this color and all these fonts, they're already there. It's just like you plug in an image, you know, I get a picture of Keith and I put it in that circle that's already there, and my picture. And so it looks super creative, but the colors, everything exists there. Why this is important is because this is the language of young people. We don't respond to long things that we have to read. I go to retreats and I know it's well-intentioned, but people hand me flyers that are just a Word document with like, you know, words on it. We need color and fonts and things to click, clickable content, less words, more graphics, okay? And then the thing about these two is you can link a web page to it. So all I have to do is click on this picture and then I can go to your website and click register and come to your event. It really goes a long way to think about how we're messaging events and programs to young people. And I can help you too. Here's another thing. When asked what other gifts or skills they might offer to the community, 113 young contemplatives responded that they could offer. They're writers, they're social media and graphic designers, they're small group facilitators and spiritual directors. So if you're a chapter coordinator or serve on a service team, you know, you can reach out to me to see if I can connect you to a young contemplative who can help you with your website. I connected someone to the New York City chapter and she upgraded their website. It's beautiful. It's modern, it's graphic, and it's clickable. Those are the key words. Okay. And there's my email. Okay, so the young contemplative stuff is rolling. The Holy Spirit's really in charge of that. Even the weekly Zoom series, I asked who would be willing to facilitate one of these Saturday weekly spiritual journey sessions. 15 of those 91 said, I will. So they're doing it every week. I did the first one and then they sign up for a slot. I don't come to all of them because I can't, but every week we're going through the journey series. We finished the whole first part, Introduction to Centering Prayer already. It's just happening. So now that I feel like that community has responded and growing, in January 2023, Leslie Gear and I started a BIPOC centering prayer group. This was an early picture. Our community's grown and changed because some of these, Leslie, you can see aren't our staples. But this is our BIPOC centering prayer group. We meet on Zoom every Monday from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. Eastern. One thing I want to note here, because often it's not, we can tend to think in terms of black and white. This is a diverse community, you know, Middle Eastern, Asian, Latino, Iranian, all people from all traditions, all cultures. And we had our first ever BIPOC centering prayer retreat this week. That's us up in Connecticut. We got grant funding. We were able to cover expenses for everyone. We did 3 30-minute centering prayer sits a day. We had a silent breakfast. We did nature walks. We had sessions, lively discussions. People of color faiths share a little bit differently. Not as many pauses between comments, but it was fun. It was fun. And we bonded, and we have relationships with each other, and it was really, really, really exciting. Why diversity outreach? This will be the last thing I share. Diversity outreach is one of those new circles. And there is a team. The diversity team would not exist in the New Vision model if it weren't for Jack Lloyd from the Chicago chapter. He has really been the one advocating and tirelessly working to connect people from chapters who are passionate about diversity. And I see some of those faces in this room. But the question comes up, why do we need it? I found interesting, key findings from the Global Religious Futures Project from December 2022. Religion is very important to people in Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and Latin America. This gray area here of the US and Mexico, you know, there's a decline in interest in things of God, whatever God you serve. But in what I call the brown parts of the world, that's what I call the brown parts of the world, it's high. Brown people are still seeking God with a fervor. This shows the Christian population in 2020. And whenever you look for these stats, you see, you know, there's still good representation in the US, but also I noticed these brown areas where there's a lot of activity. And we see this showing up too in the young contemplatives organically. There's just more organic diversity in our groups. And I know that will be the case, that as time goes on and we evolve away from emotional programs that determine how we relate to others, we'll evolve out of this. And this was the one I found interesting, the agnosticism of this Northern Hemisphere and Europe. Yeah. I'm out of time. I want to let Keith come up here, and maybe we'll get to this. So why don't you jump in? Are you okay with that? Yeah. Yeah, go. It's all up there.
All right, very good. Well, I don't have a PowerPoint, so very generously, Colleen's giving this for me to do. Yeah, so these are waves of contemplation. Our friend Adam Lukey, who's in Lincoln, Nebraska, sort of has developed this model, and so this is something that. Well, there's a photo of us, but yeah, this is a model that Adam has come up with, and it's a way that he's framed the modern contemplative movement, not only within communities, like we're a group of communities, a community of contemplatives here, but particularly is looking at leadership and leadership development, which is going into a little bit of what I'll be presenting on. This is a group of us, formerly known as the Mycelium Network, now called the Contemplative Community Creators Network. This was us just this year in spring sometime in, where were we? Ghost Ranch, that's right. And so, yeah, an amazing week there together as contemplative leaders, people that are building contemplative community, recognizing that we need each other now more than ever. But the way that Adam really frames these is he talks about the modern contemplative movement with the reemergence, talking about leaders like Howard Thurman. Oh, great, it's here. All right, I haven't seen this. So reemergence, people like Howard Thurman and Thomas Merton, who put contemplative Christianity and contemplative practice back into the minds of seekers. And so taking it really out of the monastery and giving it back to the lay people, where of course we all need it. The second wave he talks about is the method. Our friends of John Main and Thomas Keating and Basil Pennington and others that have prioritized not only the teaching of contemplation, but how do we do it? Well, you need a method. So this is the development of the Christian meditation practice or the centering prayer practice. And so this is the second wave of really leaders that are specifically supported really by the church, which is really important. These are folks that are either monks or priests or people that have a sort of the financial backing of the church. This third model is the retreat model. This is the rise of retreat centers throughout the US and beyond. People that are doing contemplative writing, maybe authors, writing, publishing books, offering retreats, giving opportunity for people to deepen their practice. Something that I'm sure everybody here has been on. Have you been on a contemplative retreat before? Yes, of course, of course. So we've all benefited from these folks that do this, and many of you here are probably folks that do this, leading retreats. But this fourth model that Adam points to is the rise of community. So not just looking for teaching, not just looking for the practice, not just looking for a peaceful and quiet place to go, but looking for a place to connect with other like-minded and like-hearted people. So this is, of course, the importance of our centering prayer groups. We come to centering prayer groups not just to deepen our practice, but to deepen our practice with people like us, people that are walking a similar journey. And so what we found that's so unique about folks in this circle is that many of us are not connected to churches. We're not connected to institutions. And so we need to get creative about what it means to be leaders, what it means to honor the call to teach and lead and invite people into the gift of contemplation without having the support of a Trappist monastery, without having the support of the Catholic Church, without being a paid pastor or a paid priest. And so each of the people in this wonderful photo, these faces are just priceless if you know them, are doing really weird things. And doing real weird things and trying to survive financially. And these are folks that I think we need to support. We need to learn about their work. We're not necessarily going to do that. It'd be fun to run around this table and do that. But everybody here is doing something really unique. And these are the faces that I think we need to look to in many ways. So I hope I did a good enough job because Colin was going to do that. But yeah, so I think transitioning over to some other thoughts. Just a minute.
You don't need that, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm gonna do what I have a pet peeve of presenters that read from their cell phone. I'm like, why didn't you plan not to bring your cell phone? And I have all these wonderful notes, but of course I changed everything last night. And so here I am going against my own false self. Yeah. I guess I wanted to share just a little bit more of my own personal journey as I came to centering prayer, because I think it speaks to not only the way that younger contemplatives find space in the community, but also what it looks like to be somebody that's a leader in the community, because that's something I want to make clear is both Colin and I are doing this work of working with younger folks. That we just want younger people to know about this practice. We want younger people to do contemplative prayer, but we also recognize we need leaders. We need new centering prayer group leaders. We need group facilitators and younger retreat leaders and young people writing books. And so there's both like just the need for community and introducing the practice to young people, but also what does it mean to support those that are also seeking leadership. And so those are sort of the two ways that I'll sort of frame it as I go through this. But yeah, I guess I want to share that I feel like I stand on this crossroad where on the one side of the work that I do is this like strong foundation of contemplative outreach in this institution that we're celebrating 40 years of, which is a beautiful thing. And there's so many resources and decades of wisdom and books written and resources and teams and just a really stable community, bringing the practice of centering prayer all around the world. And so we reap the fruits of that by gathering here together. And so that is one side that I stand on, but I also stand on I see this other road that's younger, that is more diverse, that is less Christian and more interspiritual in nature, that is less connected to institutions or has less like buy-in to institutions. Where how many of you have been with contemplative outreach for more than 10 years? Yeah, more than 15 years? 20 years? Okay. Yeah, so that's so good. Like I love that institutional commitment. And yet I also think it's a weakness of younger generations that I think contemplative outreach needs to recognize, or we can all recognize that people aren't drawn to connect and like commit to organizations in the same ways that other generations have done. But for me, as I've sort of journeyed through the work of contemplative outreach, I've been a part of chapters. I helped found our Buffalo Contemplative Outreach chapter, which didn't exist until I reached out, I think, to Mary Howard to help get that started. And so we're going to leave some time for questions too. I guess just I'm going to throw away my notes here. I guess I want centering prayer to exist in 2044. I want centering prayer at the 80th anniversary of contemplative outreach in 2064. Who will be here? Who will be the writers? Who will be the authors that continue to write books? Will it be called centering prayer? Will it be called centering meditation? Will it be the same practice? I think what we recognize working with young people is like we are diverse. We are culturally connected in ways that previous generations weren't. Our university is YouTube in many ways. Young people don't necessarily read one Thomas Keating book, then the second one, then the third one, then the 10th one. We read a Thomas Keating book, a Richard Rohr book, a Buddhist monk, a Hindu monk, and then we circle back again. And so there's a strong inner spiritual orientation that young people are embracing. And I think we need to embrace that. And that really is, to me, the second half of Thomas Keating's legacy is not only this gift of centering prayer, but also his inner spiritual orientation. I think what we want is a really healthy religion that embraces the religion and spirituality of other religions. And we want a spirituality that also embraces healthy and mature and beautiful religion as well. So we don't want just wishy-washy new age spirituality that anything goes. No, there's a value to staying rooted and connected to the Christian contemplative tradition and knowing our roots within centering prayer, while at the same time recognizing that God could not be contained within religion. We talk about opening to God as the ultimate reality or the ultimate mystery, and religion cannot contain reality. it's a safe place to explore it. It's a safe place to be together. It gives us a common language. It gives us an opportunity to connect with that common language and create community. But our religions are not the same thing as reality. And so when when young people recognize this, I think quickly that religions are falling short of their own professed ideals. They're just oriented outward, away from their own religious traditions. And that is sad on one level, because it's like, well, my own Christian tradition, it's easy to overlook it. But at the same time, it's just what's happening. So I do wonder what it means to invite more of an interspiritual approach to our centering prayer communities, maybe within contemplative outreach, what it means to embrace that, because I think that's an orientation that young people have already. And I think I'll leave it there because I do want to leave time for questions, and I'm leaving a lot unsaid, but yeah. Sure. So I guess if you have a question or comment or a cry of outreach, you can wave your hand, and I think there's a mic.
I want to thank both of you for your presentations.
Is it on?
Okay. Was such a reflection for me, both to hear you, Colleen, about llama and the 5-day no shower, and to hear Keith talk about aging, I guess, because when we moved to Lama in '82, the median age of the staff was 40. My husband and I were the oldest at 46 and 47. So we considered that age the elders. And now you guys are talking about that age as being young contemplatives, but also hearing Keith talk about the different modalities of the young people today, of what the traditions, you know, Lama Foundation was founded on ecumenism. So by being there, you were serving every single tradition, from Native American Indian to Judaism to different kinds of Buddhism to Lectio Divina, blah, 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 blah. But here we are 40 years later, 42 years later, and we've recycled to pretty much the need being the same, but a different perspective about what young is. The young contemplatives, which in our day, we were the elders. And the youngins were the ones that came in at 2025. David Frenette turned 25 on that retreat in '83. So this is just to say you're blowing my mind.
I just wanted to say something real quick too, that my experience at Llama was interesting because most of the contemplative outreach folks that were there were from the Denver chapter. And I noticed a difference between us and the Llama residents. Our group felt very clean cut, you know, like all American. And the Llama residents were like, they had a deep, messy humanity to them. And it made me think, there was a transgender person, there were people in recovery, there were people who seemed homeless or unhoused. And the level of comfort and socioeconomic how do I say this word? Homogeneity, thank you, Carl. Homogeneity within our group was alarming. Like, why is our culture so homogenous?
Thanks for the presentation. I was just curious, when you talk about the younger generations being less linked to the churches and the institutions that traditionally brought this or can bring this to them or to the masses, you talk about, I know you have an Instagram presence and YouTube as a university, but how do you find yourself attracting the younger generations? What are the seeds that kind of either they go looking for or that you set out for them to then find? Do they have to be seeking, or is there a way to reach them with a message that maybe they weren't expecting and then suddenly grabs them or opens them up? But what are the methods and the vehicles for something like that in this generation?
Yeah, great question. Learning as we go. Colleen probably has some thoughts too. But I'll just mention, I think a huge piece is just like going where people are, and that is YouTube and Instagram. I'm not on TikTok, but apparently TikTok, if you go to Instagram and just search the hashtag centering prayer, just hashtag centering prayer, and you'll find all sorts of accounts, people that are posting quotes from Thomas Keating that maybe have never come to a contemplative outreach meeting in their life, but they happen to be reading Open Mind, Open Heart, and then posting about it on Instagram and using that little hashtag. That's how I got connected with Colleen and so many others on Instagram, that hashtag centering prayer. There's people that are using it and people connecting through it. And so part of it is like social media. Another part I think is just giving opportunities to like other young contemplative leaders and centering prayer teachers, because I think people are going to be attracted to people that are in that similar age range. I mean, what the quotes you shared, it's not to say that young people are not willing to like learn from folks older, but when it's just in completely different stages of life, it does make it difficult to commit to a community with people that are going to be twice your age. So I think a big piece is, how do we not only, get young people that introduce them to the practice, but how do you uplift the young people that are already leading this practice? And I know a big piece of that is the work that Colleen's doing as well. So.
Keith is also what I call a content king. In Hollywood, they say content is king. Well, Keith is a content king. He creates graphics. So I would encourage everyone to go look at his Instagram page, at Closer Than Breath. And you'll get a vision of what it looks like to appeal to younger contemplatives through his Instagram.
Thanks. Returning to the topic of homogeneity and non-homogeneity, those of us who try to invite people in our churches for contemplative prayer within a white environment encounter a number of reasons for accepting and reasons for not accepting the invitation. I wonder if you could speak to the differences or similarities in those reasons for accepting and reasons for not accepting the invitation within African American churches and other non-white churches.
Thank you for that question. Okay, well, for example, I just at the BIPOC retreat did a presentation about the origins of monasticism and desert spirituality. And those brown people regions that I talked about, reframing the desert monastic history in its actual context is helpful, because Macarius of Egypt, Anthony of Egypt, Athanasius, Bishop of Alexandria, those were brown people. Amma Syncletica of Macedonia, Amma Sarah of Upper Egypt, those desert Abbas and Ammas were brown people. Just like in Buddhism and Hinduism, those are brown people traditions and spiritualities. And I think it can help a great deal to recontextualize the origins of monasticism.
Thank you. With all this diversity, I think contemplative prayer has been very diversified. I'm from Venezuela, I'm Latina, y yo la hago en español. Okay, I do it in Spanish. But how you guys are gonna keep the integrity with all this transition of Christianity base? Because you said something about the inner spiritual and you say no new age, but how are you going to maintain the integrity of contemplative prayer? I've been doing contemplative prayer for 22 years. And for us, the most important thing is to keeping Father Keating teachings intact, the same. So I understand I'm a young person. I started when I was 30 years old, and I have to read all the book of Father Keating, watch all his videos. And I think it's part of what we are. I think the essence cannot be lost. And technology is a tool, and we can teach them how to use the tools, but I think the integrity needs to be something that we need to care for. And we are Christian based. So, I'm sorry.
I'll let Keith respond to that one.
Yeah, that's an important question, and I think I think one of the things that draws so many to centering prayer is it's not so much like a belief-based practice, but a practice of the heart, not so much of the mind and what do you believe about God, but it's about, are you willing to open your mind? Are you willing to open your heart and say yes to the living presence of reality within you? Are you willing to say yes to the presence and action of God? And so it no doubt has deeply religious and Christian roots, and that those are roots that I believe we need to continue to water and continue to say yes to that we don't want to lose that. And then we can also learn from other traditions as well and wisdom in them without losing touch with our own roots. So I certainly want to preserve that, but I also like to point to the ways that, just like yoga is born out of Hinduism, but you don't have to be Hindu to practice yoga. And mindfulness it's a Buddhist practice. It's been watered down in many ways, but you don't have to be Buddhist to practice mindfulness. Centering prayer is a Christian traditional practice, but you don't need to be Christian to practice centering prayer. If we're willing to open our heart and say yes to the living presence of God, then
Center of the prayer. How you cannot not be Christian? This is not real. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I have to oppose to this. And the fact I want to do something, and I told you today, I want to be part of the group, and I want to help you lead this. But I cannot take Christ out of contemplative prayer because Christ is the center of the prayer.
So how do you define Christ?
How do you
Because
define
Christ is bigger than just Jesus. Christ is the title that's given to Jesus. Christ is the anointing of Jesus. But Christ is also.
Christ is the man that died for me. I don't know if he died for you, but he died for me on the cross.
He died for all.
Exactly. So how are we going to take it out of all if he is our Christ?
I love your passion.
Thank you. I love it too.
It's who you are.
Yeah, let's, that sounds like a great hallway conversation. Who's next?
I have a quick comment and then a question. The quote about from the young man who does the website for the group. He's in my group. His name is Michael. His wife's name is Audra. They had a baby, their first child, a year ago. We welcomed that baby into the group along with Michael. And he came every week, and one of them would stay down the hallway with them while we had our prayer time. But then we become part of the group and part of the conversation, and it's been delightful to have them in the group. The question that I have, we talked about many of the younger folks are not connected to a church. Since so many of our groups are based in a church, is that a deterrent? And where could we bring this out to that might be less of a barrier for those who might be seeking but not feel comfortable coming into our churches?
That's a great conversation that I think my response to that would be is, as chapters, can you start having those conversations? It's a lot, it's like the conversation about the retreat model. A lot of younger contemplatives can't afford, or if you have to choose between a vacation poolside in Puerto Vallarta or a Benedictine monastery, because financially you can only do one, you know, is the model of retreat even accessible for younger contemplatives? If you have wounds from the church or don't find yourself drawn to religion, but you're deeply drawn to Christ consciousness, do you want to be in a monastery where there's images of the crucifix on all of the walls? We don't have answers to these questions, but I think the dialogues within your chapters is very, very important. Because we do need to think about how to engage and invite.
Thanks, Keith and Colleen. This is a bit more of a comment, but it might spark some questions or discussion. Keith, we had talked a little bit earlier, we were comparing driver's license. At 32, I think I'm the youngest person here. I was first introduced to contemplative practice through the Vipassana retreats, which are pretty explicitly Buddhist. Some of you might be aware of them. They're 10-day silent retreats, and that model is spread all throughout the world. At events like those, I tend to be about the median age. So they're doing something right. At retreats like those, I tend to be about the median age. So they're doing something right in terms of recruiting younger people. And they're also able to offer them free through a donation-based model. So in terms of people who are in collaboration initiatives, or thinking more about how do we make this more open to younger people, I think they have a very good model to look at, and maybe sparking some discussion there, because that model, I think you could apply centering prayer to something very similar to what's been going on there, and create the types of retreats and opportunities that are really interesting young people. That movement has grown, especially in the last couple of years, and again, is fairly young and diverse.
Thanks, everybody. Our time is over. Thanks to all of you, and a special thanks to